Hello, welcome back, strangers. My name is James Newman, and this is Strange Bites on the Mainstream. Today, I'll be looking at the 2024 adaptation of William Burroughs' novel Queer by Luca Guadagnino. I was surprised to see Daniel Craig playing the lead role of Lee, but he does a marvelous job, I think, not in his characterization of William Burroughs was as a person, but his kind of a portrayal of the kind of feelings behind a man at the time. William Burroughs is a very difficult figure to kind of explain in a nutshell, and lots of reviews try to do that. Obviously, there's the accidental shooting of his wife in 1952, 1953. And the fact that he was notorious after publishing Naked Lunch. I began reading Burroughs from a very early age. I think I was 18 or 19 when I first picked up the early books. This is in a time when you could buy counterculture literature over the counter of Waterstones, right? Now we take it for granted that you can buy literally any genre or any kind of, obscene splatterpunk books online at a click of a button. But back then you really had to go and hunt down stuff. And Burroughs was one of the figures who actually got into the main shelves in the bookstores. And so it was a kind of easy entry point for a teenager from London or from the suburbs to enter this world. So yeah, I mean, I read pretty much everything Burroughs has written. I've read everything written about him. I was a kind of obsessive fan for a long time, still am to a bit. So every kind of film adaptation I kind of touch, or I'm kind of hesitant to look at. Obviously the Cronenberg Naked Lunch was great. Didn't follow the book. Nobody could, but it was a great kind of biographical piece on Burroughs. And he had like the nasal voice down. And also, I think Beat wasn't bad with Courtney Love playing Burroughs' wife. But more recent adaptations like Kill Your Darlings and like other films talking about the Beat generation kind of frustrated me a bit. So I was hopeful about this one, and I wasn't disappointed, to be honest. But some of the key things we should probably talk about. A lot of reviewers have talked about the kind of iconology and the symbols in the movies. Centipedes kind of as a kind of symbol of repression and stuff. I mean, that's all nonsense. Burroughs was on the GI Bill studying Mayan civilization and archaeology in Mexico City at that time. It was a very, very early influence. He had seen this stone carving of a centipede Mayan god during his visits to the sites there, and obviously that made its way into his fiction and became a constant theme. Burroughs really hated centipedes, and even in his most recent or his last like full novel, The Western Lands, there's a really good scene about centipedes and how he hates them. So that reappears quite a lot. I loved the set design. I think the colors were beautiful. The rich kind of tangerine oranges in the bars and the cafes. It looked really good. It was a Thai DOP as well, and I'm doing this podcast from Bangkok, Thailand, which is where I live. So that was interesting. And the set design was fantastic. It was a gorgeous looking film, absolutely wonderful. Another interesting thing about Burroughs, which came to light after the movie came out, after most of the reviews, and when he was living in Mexico City, and it was after after he accidentally shot his wife in the forehead with a pistol in a party. His wife Joan was very depressed, and she put a tumbler, like a whiskey glass, on her head, and encouraged Burroughs to take his best shot. And drunk on tequila, he pulled out his pistol and shot her. He missed the glass. It hit her forehead. But following up to that incident was the time in the film where he was on the South American trip with in the book Alderton, but I think in the film they called him Eugene, right? Um, but also, it came to light recently, but during that time, he also got married. He got married to another woman, a Mexican woman, building up to the trial. His lawyer thought it was a good idea if he could say he had a family to support to keep him out of jail. In the end, he didn't need to go to jail because they paid off the ballistics experts, and then he escaped back to the US and then to Tangiers, where he wrote Naked Lunch. But it's really interesting. And at that time, when he was supposed to be so in love and fallen for the Alderton Eugene guy, he actually got married, and he kept that secret his entire life. It only just came out last year, so that's an interesting side point as well. So, who was Burroughs? We got this kind of cartoon figure of this guy, in a fedora hat, shooting his wife in a Mexican pub. Apparently, the door I heard, I read somewhere, where the bullet went into after it went to his head, or where the door, which was splattered with blood or whatever, was bought by Damien Hirst, the British artist. Probably not true. I read it in a Luke Haynes book. Anyway, who was he? He was born in 1914. His grandfather invented the Adding machine, which was kind of the step between the calculator and the computer. It enabled bank tellers to count money really quickly, and it made him a rich man. And then subsequently, Burroughs, after graduating from Harvard with a first-class degree in literature, was given a $200 allowance, $200 in the 1940s, all the way to like the 1960s, was a lot of money. So he was pretty much free to do whatever he wanted, and what he wanted to do was be a writer. Later on in life, after the shooting incident, after the Mexico adventure, he went to Tangiers, wrote there for many years before landed in Paris, where he eventually got recognition around about 1959 when a edition of Naked Lunch was published. And then in the US in 63, it was tried at court for obscenity, it won. And then, of course, obscene books do well. They did at the time. You had Lolita, and you had the Henry Miller books doing really well. So Burroughs became actually quite wealthy during the kind of late 60s, early 70s. He lived in Mayfair, which was one of the most expensive places in London and in the world to live at the time. So he did very well. His uncle, Poison Ivy Lee, was Hitler's PR man in the US. So Burroughs used to go duck hunting with Hitler's PR man. Uh, he used to say stuff like, we don't report the news, we write the news. So if you don't know all that, the ending of the film is quite confusing. There's these images of Burroughs shooting this mannequin, I think it was, or there's some kind of representation of a body, and then the wife keeps appearing, and we don't know who it is. So unless you know a little bit about the story, the backstory, it's quite a confusing film. And in the book, obviously, he doesn't go with Eugene to the jungle, and they don't have that ayahuasca trip. It's worth mentioning that Burroughs read about Yai or ayahuasca when he was still quite young, just out of university. And he was one of the first Westerners to ever go in search of that drug. Now, Gap kids do it on their holiday. It's everyone does it, but he was a trailblazer in that respect. He was one of the first people to search out that drug because he had read an article in the National Geographic which said it had telepathic properties. So that was why he took there, and I guess it does to a certain extent. I don't know, I'm not taking it, but probably does.